as humans, we all have maybe perhaps experienced that type of situation where we have an emotion and we just don't know how to communicate it.
Mm.
And I was experiencing that. And so I was in search of some new language and I didn't care what it was. I just knew that I had to find it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creativity Worth Expressing. I am your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today I have a very special guest coming all the way from Southern California. I'm here with the amazing Shane Stahl. Shane, how are you doing today?
Good afternoon, doing great. It's a wonderful, wonderful sunny San Diego, Southern California Saturday afternoon. Pleased to be here.
Well, thank you for being here. This is still a new podcast, and I'm just very honored that there are people who are willing to talk about their creativity. So, just right off the start, just wanted to thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Of course. Thank you.
So to get started, can you share what is your form of creativity with the audience?
So I would say I'm multidisciplinary. My primary form of creativity is I do paintings using acrylic paints uh, mixed with glue as my primary medium. And I use all different kinds of glue. So that's the primary form of expression. But part of my process involves music, and I usually do some type of writing at the end. So, like a poem, so some type of poetry or prose or something of that sort. Um, yeah, when we get into the process, I can link it all together for you.
Okay, so let's go to kind of like your origin story. What
Yeah,
was it that sparked you to fall in love with creativity in the first place?
I think from a very young age, my parents kind of really, really took advantage of, I grew up in a not so fortunate family, and we took advantage of everything that was free. And in Los Angeles, at the time, if you receive certain types of benefits, you can go to the museums for free. And that was really my first exposure to this whole world of art and classics and literature and theater and musical theater and the symphony. And it was just this whole world I did not know existed. And because my neighborhood looked nothing like anything that was in a museum or anything that was in a symphony hall, that was just not my world. And so I always looked at it with amazement. And then, um, you shared a little bit about yourself. Like you, as I went into adolescence and became an adult, I had many mental health challenges. And through that, I kind of got disconnected with that sense of wonder, and it became much more about a sense of survival. And I lost connection to that, I don't know, that light, that vibrancy. And, you know, COVID was not a very good thing for me, just mentally, and the isolation took its toll. But I took that opportunity to say, okay, wait, I need to find something. And I started to reconnect with what is it that I used to do as a kid, right? And I used to draw as a kid. So I started drawing. And then I was watching a whole bunch of YouTube videos and I landed on this Japanese man who uses glue as art. And I was like, oh, wow, that's fascinating. And so I just started exploring and finally, kind of like for the first time in my adult life, exploring without any like rules of this has to be a certain way. And in fact, I keep some of the first paintings that I did in COVID right here. So
Oh, beautiful.
this was March 3rd, 2021. So this is my first exploration of like just do whatever and who cares, right? Because it wasn't about that.
Mm,
It was a lot more about me finding me. And I think that's really, you know, COVID provided me the opportunity both to come to that realization that I needed that in my life, but also the opportunity to be able to explore it for really the first time on my own. I've been very fortunate to travel extensively, and I spent a lot of times in museums. I just got back from 3 weeks in Europe over the holidays. Over those 3 weeks, I visited 25 museums. I saw over 30,000 pieces of art, visited almost 60 different galleries. It like I love to be immersed in it because my day life is insane.
mm,
Um, during I am not a full-time artist. This is like a passion of mine that I do as my kind of release valve, the way for me to disconnect from everything else that's going on in my life. Um, During the day, I am the chief financial officer of a very large organization. It's about a $39 million budget a year. So this is my stress relief. This is my this is my release valve, and this is my opportunity to use the other side of my brain, and really connect on an emotional level. And that's really what my art is all about. It's about me getting those emotions out. And I'm so grateful that I found a language in my art and creativity to do that, um, because it was something that I had as a kid and I lost it.
mm.
And here it is, this comeback, and the timing could not be better for me.
So thank you first of all for sharing that. And I wanted to go back. I love to go back. And you were talking about how you discovered the museums and the symphony. Can you walk us through what was it that you loved the most about it? And because you also mentioned that you lost it, like how did that happen? That you loved what you discovered at the museum and at the symphony, but how did you lose it?
So, as a child, I loved going to the museum mostly because of how quiet it was. It was a stark contrast to my neighborhood and my household. You know, it was a noisy place, not exactly the safest places, um, and a very loud and noisy, rambunctious household. I lived in an apartment complex, basically with, you know, I think there were maybe 12 units in the whole complex, and half of them were my family,
Mm.
like my aunts and uncles and cousins and grandparents. We all lived right there, and we got in a lot of trouble. Let's put it that way as a kid. Um, so when I say it was a whole different world, I really mean like
Mm.
it was something I didn't even know this kind of thing existed, you know? Um, and then art kind of drew me in, right? It invited me to see the world in a different way. And, the I think as a kid, what resonates, or at least what resonated with me in art, wasn't really well, I don't know what you would call it, the depth of the art, right? As a child, you just like, oh, that's cute, that's pretty, that's you know. So what I remember most about that was just the silence and the calmness and kind of that feeling of comfort, like you're safe, you're secure, and here you have an opportunity to explore something that's not what you normally spend your time doing, right? And then when you leave this place, you can always come back to it. It's here. And you go back, and maybe, that's kind of the first time that I think maybe looking back on it, that was like recharging the batteries as a kid, right? Like as an adult, we try and recharge our batteries on the weekends. Well, as a
Yeah.
kid, that's what I was, that's what my parents were helping me do, essentially, and explore all different kinds of things. I was in band so I learned how to play my first musical instrument, I think, goodness, in like the sixth or seventh grade. I don't know how old you are at that point. I'm a little too old for that. uh, but I learned music then, and I was in school theater at that time. I never really tried to do like I call it proper art.
Mm.
Um, I took art classes and pottery and drawing kind of stuff, but I didn't feel like I had that kind of talent. To this day, I cannot do representational art. Try to like sometimes people will ask me, can you paint my dog? No, I can't. I don't know how to do that. That's like, I marvel at people who are able to do that. And that's part of what museums and viewing all kinds of art does for me. Now, it's like I know I know my own limits, let's put it that way. And to see and be able to marvel at someone else's creativity and learn about someone else's process and how they, as an adult, I've been able to explore more depth of the art. What is it that motivates that artist? What is the emotion behind it? And that in turn inspires my own art. But yeah, to go back, as a child, I think that's what it really was about, was the silence and just this contrast to the world that was around me. And just this yearning and need for that in my life, right? I needed that safe space. I needed that calmness. And so I found myself really wanting to go there a lot.
Mm.
And thankfully, my parents were very supportive of that. Um, it was free.
Mm.
Just however much it was for the bus at that time. We're talking the 80s.
But you just showed us just a moment ago that's the very first art piece that you did post COVID or in all your life.
Yeah. Anything more than a drawing,
Yeah.
right? More than coloring. Yep. This is
And,
it.
and did you give a title to this?
This is called Daybreak.
Okay, and what was going through your mind? Because I know it had been years since you really done art, and you said you did some art classes, you did some pottery, but when you were able to get whatever was inside of you, that creativity, and put it on the canvas, what was going on through your mind?
I think during this period of time, I was in a very serious episode of depression. And I was looking for something. I live in Southern California. By no stretch of the imagination do we have ever a horrible winter. Um, but for those of us who live in San Diego, and I have for about 20 years, um, a horrible winter is when like we have like a month of gray, cold weather. And for me, that has a serious impact on my mental health and the isolation of COVID. I needed something in that moment that was bright. And so I bought from Amazon like this all kinds of art kit, right? Acrylic paints, oil paints, watercolors, and all of that. And I decided, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't really care. I just want to see what happens. And I think from there, that has been kind of the progression of my art is just, hey, I wonder what would happen if I did this? You know, what happens if I do? And that, trust me, I've
Mhm.
made some really horrible mistakes. Like, oh no, okay, I won't do that again. Um, but it really has been this sort of like, I think at its core, what I found in my childhood and now in my adult life is, if I'm if I'm anything at my core, I'm someone who likes to explore. I want to explore and find out and learn and listen and try and experiment. And um, I really don't care necessarily about the results so much until I do,
Mhm.
right? And I feel like that's been the trajectory of my art. Like I explore things. At first I really don't care what happens, and then I found something that started to work.
Mhm.
Like, oh, if I do this, I get this result, and now I have a mechanism to communicate with. Like I have a new language that I can use to communicate with, and that I can express the feelings that I have that I can't put shape to, I can't put words to. I have difficulty with my therapist even describing, I think as humans, we all have maybe perhaps experienced that type of situation where we have an emotion and we just don't know how to communicate it.
Mhm.
And I was experiencing that. And so I was in search of some new language and I didn't care what it was. I just knew that I had to find it. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And when you started plunging into creativity, into art, did you ever foresee that you would later on be doing exhibits? Like, was that part of the plan?
No, was totally not part of the plan. And in fact, was really scary. Like really scary. Um, Mostly because the initial feedback I was getting, um, you know, we're in 2025 now. So, this March will be 4 years since this painting, right? And I started actually exhibiting, I would say, oh yeah, was the winter of 2021. So like 9 months after this painting, I went from this to something hanging in a gallery. And that was with a lot of encouragement from a lot of friends, but it was with a lot of doubt. Like, what are you talking about? No, I just started. Please. No one likes this. And I wasn't taking it seriously until somebody else did. And then I'm like, oh, that sense of validation helped move the needle for me, you know? Um, but yeah, exhibiting and having shows and selling a piece of art, like just sell like a piece. No, that was not ever the goal. Um, but and it can get side. It can be it can be distracting.
Mhm.
It can really be distracting. Yeah.
And how many exhibits have you done? So it was from, COVID time, zero exhibits. Today, how many have you had?
I think I've participated now in the last couple of years in about 20 or so group exhibitions, including international exhibitions. So I mentioned to you before, I had the great fortune to spend a very long time in Europe over the holidays, and I was in a group show in Berlin and a group show in Zagreb, Croatia, and a group show in Paris. And that was just a dream, honestly. It, again, something I would never imagine. So yeah, it's been about 20 group shows or so over the last couple of years. Um, I have not had a solo show yet.
Mm.
I that's really kind of what I've been working towards this last year. That's one of my goals for this year. Um, but I've been really working on trying to build out a cohesive, body of work that has one narrative behind it. Um, is That's the next level of my development, I guess.
Like, do you have a process, a mental process, or do you just kind of just do random motions with the paintbrush?
So, because I'm an accountant, I feel I like to make things a little more complicated sometimes. So, process for me is everything. Inspiration is kind of unlimited. I'm inspired by a piece of music, a conversation with a friend, a song that I've heard, a lyric. Um, you know, Anything can really inspire me, but mostly it's a feeling that I'm starting with. And then I have little, so I also read the newspaper, like actual print newspaper. And then one of my favorite activities that I share with my older parents is we cut out headlines, but not the whole headline. We'll take a headline that's like, I don't know, let's say a headline's 8 words, but we only like two of those words. So we'll snip out the 2 words that we like. For instance, this one is the sing things. And what I do is, I'm feeling a certain kind of way. I pick up a box, I rummage through it, I whittle down to something that's actually speaking to me. If nothing speaks to me, then okay, it's not time, right? I don't force it. It
Mhm.
has to be there. So once I have this, then I go through my Spotify and shout out to Spotify if they're your sponsor or anything. Hey, I appreciate and use my subscription to the fullest extent. But I create a Spotify playlist. Depending upon the size of canvas that I decide to use, that's about how long I figured out like, okay, I need about this much time in a playlist. So I'll develop a playlist that hits every emotion, aspect, feeling that I want to convey, right? And it's sometimes it's the lyrics, sometimes it's just the feel of the music, the harmony, the
Mhm.
whatever it is, like, and that's drawing upon, being exposed to symphony and classical music and all kinds of music, and being in marching band and competitive marching band. Um, Music plays a real essential role because it helps preserve that emotion for me. So it creates a space for me to drop in and out of, like the museum was as a kid, right? Now I have an emotional space that when I want to feel that and I want to try and communicate that, I can visit. And so I listen to the playlist when it's time to paint. And a lot of times I will sit, and now I have my playlist. I have my newspaper headline, which this in return, this is the title of the painting, always will be the title of the painting. And I'll listen, and sometimes I'll sketch,
Mhm.
sometimes I won't. I'll just figure out what feels right. Um, Oftentimes, when I do sketch something, what I paint doesn't always come out like the sketch, but it's a way of getting myself sparked, if you will. So, like, this is the sketch for seeing things,
Mm.
okay? And sometimes I do multiple sketches. I'm also writing at times because I told you I write poetry and prose. So I'm also starting to like feel through what is this emotion? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What is the cadence of it? And then I start painting. And I because I work with glue, it's usually depending upon the size of the canvas, I have like 30 to 45 minutes before it starts setting and getting tacky to
Mm.
where you can't really mess with it anymore. And so that's what dictates the length of the playlist. Um, but then it takes 6 to 8 hours to dry, you know? Yeah.
What are some songs that you have on your playlist?
Each playlist is unique to the piece, to the title, and it is all about that emotion. So I sorry, I'm on my phone, so I can't open my Spotify at the moment to give you examples. But like I listen to all kinds of music. So it could be anything from, contemporary pop music like Lady Gaga or that espresso song. I don't know what her name was. I also listen to a lot of indie bands. So there's a lot of the band Camino is one of a band that I really like. There's a band called Floor, Flor. Their music is really great. But it really is like sometimes, like for this one, sometimes what I'll do is I just do a search in Spotify for seeing things, and I look to see did somebody has somebody else already created a playlist that is this? Are there songs with this in the title? And I just go through like it's a whole afternoon.
Yeah.
I'll go through and I just listen to all kinds of music and oh, this song is I can feel that. That feels right. Yeah. And I create this musical almost story arc, if you will, and then I sketch, right? So I'm sketching the feelings that are coming through the inspired by the music, um, inspired by what this phrase sparked in my head. So it really is unlimited inspiration, if you will, and yeah, it's not like I listen to the same songs all over every time. There are some people who that works for. Rothko infamously listened to the same record every painting, which is probably why every painting looks the same. I don't know. For me, I got to have it fresh.
Mm.
Got to be something new. And in some ways, I have to be trying something new with each piece. Otherwise, after a while, they all start looking the same. And I'm like, "Ah, I don't know if I can keep doing that."
So something that I went to your website, shanestalls.com.
Yeah, so you can actually get there by going to Art by Stahl, my last name. So ARTBYSTAHL.com. And it all links to shanestal.com, which is the primary website. Yes.
So I go to your website and I'm browsing through. I see you have your art pieces, the title, but it also has a few poetic lines. Can you share what is your process when it comes to coming up with the words and making this awesome poetry?
So the poetry is an evolution that happens during the painting. So like I said, you know, I paint in multiple layers, and it's about a 6 to 8 hour dry time per layer. So one painting, like this painting, Seeing Things, took me like 2.5, almost 3 weeks to finish. And during that time, I'm listening to the music, I'm staring at the painting, and I'm writing. I'm trying to flesh through what those feelings are. What is that emotion? And I think part of the being an accountant and doing accounting as my professional life, I like to have a sense of order. So you'll notice in my poetry, there is always like a logical, there's some kind of like logic theory behind it, if you will. So I'll limit myself to a certain number of words. The title of each piece of art has to be included in the poem or the prose that I write. So um, it's almost like doing a Sudoku,
Mm.
right? Or a crossword puzzle. That's kind of what that's my approach to it. I know it probably sounds really bizarre, but that really is my approach to it. And it really is about like, okay, if I create that kind of framework, how can I use the most impactful words to communicate what it is that I have painted? So as I'm developing the painting, the poem changes, and I try this out and I try that out and I explore this. And what if I move it in this order, So as I was showing you my little sketchbook journal thing earlier, I continuously write and write and write, being a person who has found recovery in my adult life. That's part of how I got off and got disconnected in my adult life. I had suffered some very serious trauma, and used a lot of substances to cope. And that really just throws threw me completely off course, and through a program of recovery, I've been able to find this new purpose. You've mentioned, what is my purpose? I feel, I work for a nonprofit organization during the day. That feeds my soul in a whole other way. And COVID really gave me that opportunity to center myself in every aspect of my life in purposeful action, right? So I'm not painting to make money. I'm painting to communicate. I'm painting to preserve my emotions. I'm painting to process the world and chaos that's happening outside of my art studio, which is my garage. You know, um, that's what's important to me. That's what my art is about, and I've developed a process, and I feel like the process is a pathway, it's a channel, it's a roadmap to get me to the place where I can stop thinking about everything that's happening beyond that door. You know, turning the world off is something that I, a lot of people probably struggle with. For me, it's an exceptional struggle, and this provides that for me.
What would you say sustains you during this time to get a project completed?
Hmm. I really think that what I think the art sustains me to keep everything that isn't art going. Really, I feel like it's the other way around, you
Mm.
know? Art sustains the rest of my life. And so the rest of my life necessitates this, you know? And uh, it is a true blessing that I found this, right? Because my life necessitates something to sustain it, something to feed my soul, and something, my work feeds my soul. This is my soul feeding others, or me sharing my soul and my emotions with others, um, being able to tap into what we share in common in our shared emotions. We all have heartbreak, we all have breakups, we all have jobs that are horrible on certain days, right? We all have frustrations with our parents who don't understand us, and our kids who are just like going out of control. And life,
Yeah.
we all have life. And in a lot of ways, I just for my own sanity, I have to distill it down to that basic emotion and try and work from there. You know, um, if I'm angry, it's probably not the best time to paint, but it's probably the time that I need to the most, right? And so I have a whole bunch of angry art. It's not good. Nobody ever sees it, but it exists, you know? Um, and that is part of what sustains me, that emotional need. And then the support, I, I I am continuously amazed at the support of my family, my friends, but also the way that my art resonates with other people. It was very scary to start exhibiting my art because I was like, nobody's gonna like it. It's just, who am I kidding? I don't know what I'm doing. I've never taken a freaking art class outside of, the eighth grade in my life. I don't know a single thing about art that other than what I have seen and read and learned through YouTube videos, going to museums, reading books and literature about art. I have a whole library of art books. So, just completely immersing myself in it and allowing it to be sort of that imaginary world, that playground that we used to have as a kid. That's where art, that's what my art is, right? It's that playground for me. It's the imaginary friend that follows me wherever I want to go. You know, um, yeah.
How do you see yourself evolving?
I am heavily starting to explore other types of art. So not just two-dimensional art, but now three-dimensional art.
Ooh.
Um, Working on some of my first kind of sculptural pieces. So that's exciting. I'm starting to use and incorporate some new materials, some new mediums. So really starting to explore cement and how I might be able to use that. I don't know. So,
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing that when it's out.
yeah. And I feel the further along that I progress, um, it's just practice. And if other people connect to it, great. Like I mentioned earlier, one of my goals this year is to have a solo show somewhere
Yeah.
of some sort. I don't exactly know how that's going to happen, but I know I have a lot of friends who are artists who have had their own shows. So um, if I put the intention out there, it'll happen, you know? So I'm looking forward to that. This year, I feel like solo show, exploring three-dimensional art and a couple new materials, and really honoring the commitment to myself to really spend the time in the art studio doing the art.
Are there any upcoming artists who you think should be we should keep an eye on?
You know, I'm a big admirer of street art.
Mm.
And usually when I travel, I love to take tours of street art. And there is a crew called One Up that just their commitment of giving back to their own community and what they stand for is something that just really resonates with me. So, you might see some of their work in a neighborhood close to you soon. They have a lot of work all over Europe and a lot of work here in the U.S., particularly in New York. I also really, really like Nick Cave. I think he does these sound suits that are just spectacular. Like, I don't even know. They're like alien creatures from your childhood, imaginary forests, or I don't know. It's crazy. I love his work. Um, and I'm a really good friend with someone who is sort of my art mentor. I love and collect his work. His name is Waylon. Oh my God, I don't even know his last name. His name is Waylon. But uh, I kind of feature his stuff a little now and then on my Instagram. So, oh my gosh, what is his last name? I can't believe that I'm totally forgetting it. And of course, I'm on my phone, so I can't look it up.
And now it leads me to like my closing question that I ask everyone on the show, and that is, why is creativity important for you?
For me, creativity is, I think I was saying earlier, it is that mental health outlet. It really is my way to be able to process emotions. A lot of people have a lot of really great skills in being able to cope and process and handle emotions. Uh, those are challenges for me in a lot of different ways, and art provides that for me. Um, yeah, it's a lifesaver.
Well, thank you so much, Shane, for sharing. I've really enjoyed this interview and just having this conversation. I really loved it. So thank you for agreeing to be here on the podcast.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I enjoyed it, Ryan.
And where can people discover more of your talent?
You can follow me on Instagram at the Art by Stahl, or look at my website, artbystahl.com.
Well, thanks so much. And to the audience, those of you who tuned in, thank you for tuning in and watching this episode. Please give a like, a share, and please don't forget to subscribe. And please, again, share this episode so that other people may discover the awesome art by Shane Stahl.
Thank you.